The morning she called the sheriff on me, I stood under my father's flag with a coffee that still smelled like cedar smoke. The wind pushed that flag straight as a board. For a second, it looked like it was trying to hold the sky together. Keep that picture in your head. On the other side of my ranch gate, a white SUV idled with its blinker ticking like a metronome. She leaned out the window and used the line she'd repeated for 3 weeks. "Hey, open up. I have HOA rights to the trail." I set the mug on the post, flipped the lock twice, and told her the truth. "Ma'am, there is no trail through my land." She laughed. Not kind. It sounded like metal on concrete. "Everyone knows it's ours," she said. "The board approved it. Your gate blocks community access." She waved at the pasture like that settled the law. "My father hung this gate when I was 12. He measured twice. He told me to hold the hinge steady while he drilled. He said, 'A gate isn't there to keep people out. It's to remind them to knock.' I told her she was welcome to knock. She was not crossing my line. 2 more SUVs rolled in behind her. Windows down. Music low. Someone had a phone up, recording. A man I'd never met yelled, 'Public path.' It wasn't public. I knew that. The county records knew that. Even the old oak leaning toward the creek knew that. But a rumor had grown teeth in the HOA group chat, and now folks across my fence were living inside that rumor. I could feel it press against me. All talk, no truth. Like a hot wind, my father's toolbox slid through my memory. Old sockets rattled. I could smell his coffee, strong and a little burnt from that percolator he never scrubbed right. I laid my hand on the top rail and kept my voice calm. "Turn around," I said. "There's a public trailhead, a mile north, paved bathrooms. Signs. This is a private ranch." My ranch. The woman who would later sign a complaint as president. At Cedar Bend HOA stepped out and lifted her phone to my face. "You're going viral," she said. "We'll see how long you play sheriff when the real ones show up." Her earrings flashed like tiny sirens. I told her I didn't want trouble. I wanted to be neighborly. I also told her the survey pins weren't opinions. "I'm calling," she said. "This is harassment." She turned her back and performed the call like a stage actor. "Yes, officer. A man is blocking community access. He's yelling. I fear he might be armed." I wasn't yelling. I wasn't armed. I was barefoot in old jeans with a gate between us, keeping the world at its proper distance. While she waited for the cruiser, few neighbors got brave. They walked up to the fence and argued the shape of my creek like they'd drawn it themselves. I heard historic use, common pathway, and the deadliest phrase of all. We've always is a strong drug when people want something that isn't theirs. It blurs edges. It erases deeds. It keeps folks from reading the black ink down at the courthouse. The wind shifted and rolled the smell of cut hay over the road. Boone, my dog, watched from the porch with his ears up. The first sheriff's car arrived with the slow patience of a man who's done this too many times. He was polite. He was tired. He took everyone's names. He asked for mine. I handed him the parcel map with the legal description highlighted, the deed with meets and bounds, and a stamped survey from 3 years ago. He read under the shade and gave them back. "Ma'am," he said to the president, "this is private property. Use the public trailhead." She folded her arms until the leather creaked. "We have an HOA, right?" she repeated. "We'll sue." The deputy turned to me and gave the look, "You only understand if you've made it to middle age with something worth protecting." Half warning, half encouragement. Be patient. They'll test you. You're right, but you may have to prove it the long way. He nodded once and drove off. The crowd thinned. She lingered, stared at my father's flag, and said, "That thing is tacky. You'll take it down when we win." Then she left a trail of gravel dust and hot brakes. I picked up my mug. The coffee had gone cold. Boone trotted down, nose high, and huffed like he'd chased something invisible. I tightened the chain and looked at the hinge bolts my father set with his bare hands. The steel still carried the thumbprint he pressed in when it was warm from the welder. He told me once, "Land doesn't belong to you. You belong to it. You borrow it from the ones who loved it before you and pass it to the ones who will love it after." I tried to breathe that truth in. The wind slackened. The flag softened. The ranch got quiet. Quiet lies. It makes you think the storm has changed its mind. It hadn't. It was just taking a better angle. That evening, a letter with my name spelled wrong slid into the mailbox. HOA logo in expensive blue ink. Inside was my first notice of violation from a neighborhood I wasn't part of. 7 days to remove my unauthorized barrier and restore community access. Threats of fines. Threats of liens. Warnings of further legal action. I read it twice and set it beside my father's pocket knife. Heat climbed my chest, anger, disbelief. I didn't want to fight. I wasn't raised to back away from my own fence line either. I rinsed my mug and set it on the rail to dry. The sun dropped behind the barn. Crickets rose like a choir. Tomorrow I would knock first. Asterisk. I woke before sunrise and laid out papers like a carpenter lays out tools. Deed, survey, title policy, county plat. Recorded easements on neighboring parcels. If paper could sweat, mine would have beaded. Fresh coffee steadied me. The HOA letter sat in the middle like a dare. They'd said historic access. They'd cited a board vote. They'd threatened a lien. I smiled at that last one. A lien on land you never touched is a sticker on a steel door. Loud, maybe sticky. Useless without the right key. By mid-morning, I had 3 voicemails. The HOA compliance manager, young and confident. A neighbor I'd never met who wanted to work something out. And the president, herself with a final courtesy call before she moved. This to our attorney. Tone made it sound like she'd done me a favor by living near me. I called the neighbor first. I told him about the public trailhead. I offered to donate a couple of truckloads of gravel if the HOA wanted to improve that path. He sounded surprised I wasn't a monster. But the map shows a dashed line, he said. A dashed line can mean a lot of things, I told him. On this one, it marks where the creek meandered before the '98 flood. He whistled. A little truth got in. I called the county recorder and asked for anything ever, mentioning an easement across my parcel. The clerk knew my voice from an old boundary dust-up. "Nothing new," she said. "Same as always. You're as private gets." I thanked her and pulled the HOA bylaws. Their covenants stopped 2 lots short of my gate. The only thing tying them to me was a dirt rumor and a couple of bold personalities. I highlighted the section that said their powers ended at their recorded boundary. My gut said they'd never read their own rules. Bullies count on noise, not detail. Around noon, Tom from the feed store pulled in with a sack of mineral and a tired smile. He scratched Boone's ears. "Heard you made the news," he said. "Depends which channel," I said. He winked. "The one where the truth still pays cash?" He said half the town already had an opinion. Some called me stubborn. Some said brave. Most didn't know the facts. That's how mobs work. They rush downhill to the lowest place. "I'm not stubborn," I told him. "I'm careful," saying it felt like drawing a chalk line. "Kindness isn't surrender. Boundaries aren't meanness." At 2, I called the president. She answered on the first ring. "Well," she said, "ready to comply?" I kept my tone level. "I've reviewed your letter. There is no easement across my land. Your association has no authority here. Use the public trailhead." She laughed, short and sharp. "Our attorney will be in touch." "Thank you for the heads up," I said. "And please don't trespass while you sort this out." She hung up. The silence after felt like air after lightning. Here's what I hadn't told them. I'm retired. I split fence posts slower. I nap on Sundays. But for 30 years, I practiced law. Property law, easements, nuisance, trespass, quiet title. I worked in courtrooms that smelled like old books and lemon oil. I wrote briefs that took longer than planning a vacation. I stood before judges who asked questions that cut like scalpels. And I learned a simple truth. People can want a thing so badly, they mistake wanting for a right. They build a whole world around that mistake. They decorate it. They invite friends to move in. Then they act offended when you ask for the deed. I don't lead with that truth. You don't walk into a conversation with your boots on the table. I wanted the easy way. I wanted to skip the expense and the bitterness lawsuits breed like weeds. But if someone puts your land in their mouth and chews, you either swallow your pride or you stand up straight. My father didn't raise a swallower. The SUVs tapered off. The online noise grew. A post about me racked up hundreds of comments. Selfish, brave, misled, loud, few facts. On day 4, a courier delivered a packet thick enough to stun a catfish. Complained an application for temporary injunction. HOA and its president as plaintiffs. Me as defendant. They wanted the court to force me to unlock the gate and restore access. They alleged historic use, common easement, harassment, and my favorite, emotional distress. I set the packet on the table like a trophy from a hunt I hadn't planned. I poured coffee and read every word. Their claims were sloppy. Their exhibits were screenshots and mood pictures. Kids walking near a fence 5 years ago. A neighbor's dog by the creek. A selfie of the president with my son set behind her and the caption, "Love our trail." Hearts everywhere. A mood board isn't a case, but it can cost you time, money, and sleep. I looked out the window at my father's flag. The light turned it the color of rust and blood. Boone sighed on the floor like an old man. I called my friend Bill, my old law partner. His laugh feels like a warm blanket. "You want me on it?" he asked. "I want you to drink coffee and remind me to be kind," I said. He chuckled. "I'll bring donuts. And a pen." We set a morning meeting. I slept fine, not because I'm fearless, but because the ground under me doesn't move. At dawn, I walked the fence, checked the chain, and touched the hinge bolts like relics. I whispered a promise to the man who taught me to keep a level steady even when my hands shake. Then I drove to town with the complaint on the seat. The courthouse sat square and stubborn on the square. By noon, the HOA would learn something they didn't plan for. I don't raise my voice. I don't posture. If you ask a court to take my land, you've stepped into a room where I'm very much at home, and you better have more than a dashed line on a map. We arrived 10 minutes early for the use junction hearing. My father believed in showing up early to anything that mattered. I wore the one suit that still fits right. Bill wore the grin of a man who trusts time more than drama. The HOA's attorney was young, sharp, and buzzed by a phone that never stopped vibrating. He walked in with the president and 2 board members. She wouldn't look at me. But the heat off her stare felt like a stovetop. The judge came in with robes that moved like a slow tide. He's the kind who listens with his eyebrows. He looked at the stacks, then at us. "Let's keep this efficient," he said. The HOA went first. The attorney talked fast and loud. He said community 100 times, as if repetition builds a bridge over a fence. He waved photos. He called the dashed line a trail of record. He said my gate suddenly appeared and caused harm. He said children cried and seniors lost their joy. He used words like equity and fairness, hoping the judge would hear law. When it was our turn, I kept it porch level simple. I told the judge what the documents say. I handed up county records showing no easement. I handed up the HOA covenants that stopped to lots shy of my land. A sworn statement from the adjacent owner that no historic use ever existed. A letter from the Parks Department pointing to the public trailhead. Then I stopped talking. You never rush a judge who's reading. The president shifted in her chair like a kettle near a boil. The attorney objected to the sworn statement, then withdrew it when the judge pointed to the rule. He insisted the dashed line helped them. I explained the legend. He said their board vote created an easement. I explained that votes inside a private club don't rewrite deeds outside it. The judge's eyebrows settled. He asked one question that cut to bone. Counsel, are you aware of any recorded instrument granting your association an easement across this parcel? The attorney swallowed. Not at this time, Your Honor. The judge nodded like a man who just found a stud behind drywall. Injunction denied. It could have ended there. People who lose fast often decide to lose slow. A week later, they amended their complaint. New counts. Defamation because I called their push overreach. Nuisance because my locked gate caused distress. Damage to community morale. Money for loss of enjoyment.
Oh.
Bill shook his head. Process as punishment, he said. Then we let process teach, we counterclaimed. Trespass for members stepping onto my land to plant fake trail flags and take photos. Slander of title for lien threats. Abuse of process for turning court into a megaphone. We asked for attorney's fees under the statute that protects owners from frivolous claims. Then discovery. Not a paper flood. A single tap on the right pipe. Identify all recorded documents supporting your alleged easement. Requested board communications with the developer and minutes from the meeting where they voted to cross my fence. I already knew what we'd find. People reassuring each other, not the law. Depositions came. The president sat across from me in a room that smelled like paper and nerves. Her attorney sat to her left, ready to object. I didn't needle. I let silence work. When did you first learn the HOA had no recorded rights across my parcel? I asked. I'm not sure, she said. Bill slid over an email from their lawyer, 2 months old. We have not located any recorded easement across defendant's land. She stared until the air felt different. So why did you keep telling people there was a trail? I asked. Because we've always used it, she said. When? I asked. On public days. No answer. The court reporter's keys clicked like rain on a tin roof, another board member admitted. He knew the public trailhead existed, but discouraged it because the parking lot looked trashy. I didn't need more. The truth was building its own fence now. Set in bedrock. The months after were the long way through. Motions, hearings, calendars. They tried to paint me as a crank. I just kept telling the same story without adjectives. Judges noticed that Boone got older that winter. Fewer dragonflies to chase. More naps and sun patches across the porch. I raised my father's flag every morning. I set posts deeper where the creek ate at the bank. I waved to neighbors who waved back. The loudest voices got tired of their own echo. Whispers carry farther than shouts. One evening, the young attorney called Bill. Resolution. He asked. We met at a diner where the coffee is honest about being cheap. He floated ideas. Unlock on Sundays. Limited access for seniors. No fees. Everyone wins. I listened and slid a sheet across the table. Dismissal with prejudice. Public statement that my parcel is private. Promise to stop telling folks otherwise. Payment of a portion of my fees. He stared like I'd handed him a snake. She won't sign this, he said. Then we'll see her in court, I said. Trials are risky, he said. The law on this isn't, I answered. He looked different then. Not angry. Just young, learning that hard lessons come due. We tipped well and drove home in blue light. The ranch breathed like a sleeping animal. The gate stood where it always had. I locked it out of habit and respect, not fear. There is a special quiet the night before trial. Not the absence of noise. The presence of something older. Like a church hush before a wedding. Be who you are. Don't show off. This will change how people remember each other. I sat with Boone's head on my boot and watched the flag shine in moonlight. My father never went to law school, but he understood verdicts. A verdict is just a fence with the judge's name on it. Tomorrow, we'd set that fence. I'd sleep fine either way. I had told the truth the long way through. The courtroom was fuller than usual on trial day. HOA folks on one side, ranch folks on the other. An empty river of benches between. The town was deciding which story to believe. The HOA went first. They called the president. She spoke about community, tradition, and sunsets from my fence line. She cried over losing her place to breathe. I believed the tears. People can be wrong and sincere at the same time. Their lawyer propped the dashed line map on an easel like a fridge drawing. He asked the jury to do what's fair. When it was my turn, I spoke for myself, not for spotlight, because the person who lived it should carry it into the record. I told them about my father's hands on that gate and how he taught me to look a man in the eye when I say no. I told them about the public trailhead, the emails where the HOA admitted there was no easement, the lien threats, the fake flags planted on my bank, then the law, in short words. You can't vote yourself a right you didn't buy. You can't take what you didn't earn. Hurt feelings aren't title. We called the county recorder. The previous owner? We entered the covenants that stopped 2 lots short. We showed the fee statute for frivolous claims. Then I sat and let the room breathe. The judge instructed the jury like a man reading measurements. Recorded burden, grant, trespass, nuisance. The jury left. The room softened. The president stared at the floor. Her attorney polished his phone screen with his sleeve. I didn't pray for victory. I prayed for clarity. Courts give one or the other. The verdict came back before the coffee cooled. For me on every claim. Against the HOA on the ones that mattered. Trespass, slander of title, abuse of process. Fees to be decided later. No cheers, no clapping. Just that special quiet again. The kind that holds you like water holds a boat. The attorney gave me a small nod. I returned it. He did his job. I did mine. The law, imperfect as it is, did enough. Outside, the wind was up. It smelled like rain and carried the sound of the flag across the square. Boone waited in the truck with his chin on the window. I scratched his neck and told him we were going home. Bill clapped my shoulder. You think they learned? He asked. I looked at the bronze pioneer holding a plow handle like a promise. Some did, I said. Some will need a second lesson. He laughed his warm blanket laugh. I'll bring donuts for that one too. A week later, the judge issued fees. Not all of them. Enough to sting. Enough to make the next board meeting feel different. The HOA posted a notice saying, "My parcel is private and residents should use the public trailhead." Dry and forgettable, but word travels faster than paper. Folks told a new story about me. Not stubborn, careful, not unfriendly. Boundaried. The neighbor who pulls your truck from the mud and reminds you which pasture is yours. The next morning, I unlocked my gate. Not for them, but for me, and walked the fence in bright sun. The grass hissed at my boots. The creek talked to itself. I checked hinge bolts and felt my father smiling just over my shoulder. I raised the flag higher than I had all month. The wind grabbed it and made a sound that always brings a lump to my throat. The ranch exhaled. So did I that afternoon I saw the president's SUV slow by my gate. She stopped at the public trailhead sign a mile up and read for a long time before turning into the lot. For a second, I wanted to be petty, to think of a clever line that would circle town for years. Instead, I poured another coffee and sat with Boone. Forgiveness is a kind of boundary, too. It keeps you from becoming the thing you fought. Near sunset, a kid I didn't know rolled up on a bike and asked if he could pet Boone. I said yes. He scratched behind Boone's ears and looked over my shoulder at the pasture. My grandpa used to farm, he said. I like how it smells here. I told him that smell was cut hay, creek water, and a little gasoline. He laughed. "Smells like America," he said. I just nodded. Some pride doesn't need a stage. When the light faded, the flag went dark against a pale sky, and the ranch made its small sounds. The chain settling. A cricket trying a note. Boone twitching in a dream. I thought about the fight and what it cost and what it protected. How easy anger makes you big and small at the same time. How standing your ground doesn't have to look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like handing up a document and letting ink do the work. Sometimes standing up for what's right means standing alone until others remember what neighbor really means. Have you faced an HOA like this? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every one. If you believe some fights are worth having, hit subscribe. Let's stand up together.